It's also a bit rich.
Hello everyone, welcome to today's big discussion about India and colonialism. Today we will be dealing with two major questions. Do Britain's current leaders owe India an apology for events committed during colonial rule? And should Britain possibly pay reparations to India to compensate India for the economic consequences of British imperialism? So, we will be discussing these questions, and when I say we, it means we have two. I am lucky enough to be joined by two great discussion partners, Tuna and Natalia. So, I'm going to start by asking Tuna, what is your read on the first major question? Should Britain's current leaders apologize to India for some of the events committed during colonial rule?
I think for moral and ethical reasons, they should, because I think it's a bit rich to oppress, enslave, and kill, and maim and torture people for 200 years and then celebrate the fact that they are democratic at the end. This view is widely shared by Indian citizens, which mean that a fifth of the world population agrees with this view.
I agree with this, but it's also a bit rich to complain about the country that got India into the modern world before any of its neighbors and freed it from the awful empire nobody liked.
Yeah, so there is that kind of a benefit of what India did, or what Britain did for India in trying to get it to the modern world. It did do quite a lot, but again, there really can't be overlooked some of the major consequences of having India. Having Britain during the Raj, and obviously a lot of the racism that was endured, and I mean, there's the question, because a lot of India's economic market was shut down when Britain came to power, and are India owed reparations or some kind of economic compensation at this current time? Well, I'm going to give my opinion on this first. I don't really think they're owed reparations, because at this point, the Indian economy is bigger than the British economy at this point. So I almost think, just based on what I've heard from some Indian people, from some Indian perspectives, I think it'll be a little almost like unnecessary or a little bit insulting that like they would need reparations because they bounced back from it so well and made such a strong economy. What do you guys think?
Well, I disagree, and I think reparation should be paid because, first of all, historically it's been common, and the British themselves have imposed reparation at the drop of a hat. For example, they built the Tiberian in the government for 2.5 million rupees after invading Tibet in 1904. And so, yeah, if you do harm to your country, you should pay reparation. And your argument that since the Indian economy recovered, I don't think is very valid because it took like 100 years. And just a fact, after British got into India, the India's share of the world economy dropped from 23% before and down to 4% after. Some part is obviously because of industrialization in the West, but there's also some part British played in the decline of India's wealth.
Well, but if I agree with your statement, but if Britain decided to pay reparations, they for every country they colonized, which were a lot, they'd literally go broke. Like in India, Britain did many good things, such as constructing infrastructure, such as bridges, and the railroad track, which was a pretty big deal for India because it increased transportation and communication around that. So they'd have to pay a lot of money, which would hurt their economy.
Yeah, and the question is, though, is it really fair to ask the current British generation of people who had really no role in the Indian the colonization of India to pay and bear the blame for something that they didn't do, only their ancestors did? And that just doesn't seem like it's going to help many people in the long run, especially, I kind of get more of your point. If India was very much struggling and absolutely devastated, but the thing is they're not, and they're definitely becoming one of the most fastest growing economies today on the world stage. So I think that's definitely something you have to take into account. But I do think it's very interesting the kind of the other argument on the other side of things for the purposes of an apology. And there's a lot of economic and historical reasons for that. One of them is that, again, the Indian economy took a huge hit during British imperialization. Another one is that there is a lot of kind of history of racism. And how do you think that, neither of you can answer this, how do you think that British people could work to better their relationships with India after their long history of racism discrimination?
I think the first thing they could do is be more open to immigrants, and in the current political climate, it's very hard for Indian students to come to Britain and study just because of the political climate right now, and they do not feel welcome, and so I think that's something that needs to be changed.
I mean, I agree 100%. But there's kind of not much they could do because most of the harm is already done. I guess they could stop their behavior towards them, like the racism, which of course has. And that's really all I would say.
Yeah, it's so important, obviously, to treat, especially in this age where we know so much about each other, to make sure that we treat everyone with respect and dignity all around. All right, thank you so much for that great conversation, and that's it for us.